it is April, and so that means in March, I read some books, and now it's time to talk about them. So this is my March book rundown, what I read. And if you're following along, then you can see all of the links to these books in my description here on the video. If you're interested in any of these, then please go ahead and buy one of those books. Check them out. They're great. I also, if you have questions, leave a comment, send me a message, whatever. And I'd love to talk more about these books with you. I have a wide range of books that we're going to be looking at today, partly because I am part of the 52 book club challenge this year. So I'm trying to follow their list, and it helps kind of broaden my horizons on the different kinds of books that I read. And so, so let's get into it. I have a mix of books that I read with Kindle and print and audiobooks, and I count all of those as reading. They're all good. And so I'll talk about those as I walk through. So let's get to it. First book that I finished in March was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I'm sorry if I butchered your name, but I loved this book. This is the story of a shepherd boy who is going on a quest to find his life's purpose. And he is going to Egypt to see the pyramids. And along the way, he learns about himself, about identity, about what truly matters in life and love. And it was a delightful, short little book. I would highly recommend The Alchemist. I read this because one of the challenges for the 52 Book Club Challenge was a book published in the Year of the Dragon. And so this was one of those available books that I had been wanting to read for a long time, and I'm glad I finally read it. So yeah, check it out, The Alchemist. In March, I finally finished Biblical Critical Theory by Christopher Watkin. This book is a chunky one. It is huge and it is fantastic. And so if you are a student of the Bible and culture, philosophy, if you like all of those kinds of things and you're trying to wonder, like, how does it all kind of fit together? And why is the world the way it is? This book was fantastic. And it's one of those books that I'm going to keep close to my shelf. So when I come across a topic like eschatology or the development of the Trinity, these different ideas, capitalism, economics, all those kinds of things. Watkin talks about it philosophically, biblically. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Highly recommend. Check it out. Several months ago, my sister and I started a podcast and a read-through with The Lord of the Rings as a way to get to know this book a little bit. My sister's never read this book, but also in memory of our cousin who passed away this last year, and she loved The Lord of the Rings. And so Heather and I, my sister, we finished The Hobbit, and this is my, 20th read-through of this book. I love this book, and there are so many things that so many people could say about it, and they probably have, but if you have never read The Hobbit, this is just a wonderful little cozy escape. And Tolkien is a genius, and he captures all of the wonder and majesty of good fantasy writing in The Hobbit. There's a reason it's a classic. If you haven't read it, please read The Hobbit. From time to time, our church staff, we read books and we talk about them. And in March, we read together The Relational Pastor by Andrew Root. And this is a refreshing book for church leadership. I grew up in a church leadership culture that said over and over again, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And people would use that influence and those relationships to leverage people to do things that they wanted them to do for the leader. Root kind of comes at this from a different angle and says that our relationships are the ends in themselves. They are not intended to be leveraged for our purposes. And so this is a book that I'm going to be thinking about for a while. It helps give a different perspective on leadership and relationships, and remember that people are made up of relationships. And that was very helpful. Check it out. One of my long-term projects is to read through all of the Hugo winners for Best Novel. And so I'm getting close to the end of the list. And this is a book that I've been putting off for a while. It's called Spin by Robert Charles Wilson. And I was putting it off because it seemed like it was going to be a heavy science fiction book, and I didn't know when I would be ready for it. But I only have a few more left, and so I picked it up, and it was excellent. It also helped that I read this in print, Kindle, and audiobook. So I was able to just keep moving as I was reading through it, and then never really gave me time to turn away from it and lag on the reading. But this story is Earth is encased in a mysterious shell, and then we find out that time moves differently in the shell, and how do we handle that change and technology and all this stuff. So it was a fun read. Check it out. I am a massive comic book nerd. I love comic books, and in particular, I love Marvel comic books. And when I first heard about all of the Marvels by Douglas Woke, I was like, that's a book I have to read. And it's great. He read all the Marvel comics, all of them. And he goes through and kind of gives overviews of the main titles and storylines. And it's a great entry point into just to understand what's going on in this Marvel comic universe. And so, yeah, I loved this book. It was super fun. And I read it as part of the 52 Book Club Challenge. And because one of the items was a book with a yellow spine. And so there it is. So yeah, so that was able to also knock another thing off of my list as I finished this one up. So good. All of the Marvels. Check it out. The next book that I read is part of this year's Nebula Award nominees for Best Novel. And so it's the Nebula and Hugo Award nominees have been released. And so I'm going to be starting to work through those lists. And so the Terraformers by Annalee Nowitz. And this is a story about in the far future, humanity has spread throughout the universe, and they're terraforming planets. And there's a mysterious community on this terraformed planet. And so this kind of goes through decades of conflict and peace, and learning to adjust with different communities and the outcomes of genetic modifications and all kinds of different stuff. It's kind of like a mix with the Uplift War, where animals are brought up into sentience. And so this was an interesting book. Wasn't my favorite, but it was worth the read. I could see why it's nominated. Annalee Nowitz is definitely doing some interesting things in this book. And so, yeah, Annalee Nowitz, The Terraformers. Check it out. I listened to it on the audiobook through Libby, which also helped keep it moving through. Libby, if you're not using Libby, I'm not sponsored by Libby, but if you're not using Libby, what's wrong with you? Use Libby. It's awesome. The last book that I finished in March, and this is also an audiobook that I checked out from Libby. It is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. And this was also part of the 52 book challenge, and it was a title related to the word wild. And so maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but I went with outlaw as the being related to wild. The cool thing about this challenge is I can make the rules as I want, really. And so I went with it. And this is set in an Asian culture where there's magic, and there's warfare, and there's weapons, and there's revenge, and there's all kinds of interesting things going on, and kind of a found family, found community, as the weapon master has to flee and find new people and to live with and survive with. And so, so this is the first time I've ever read anything by S.L. Huang, and it was interesting, and I enjoyed it. The audiobook was very good. The narrator was great. But yeah, The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang. Check it out. And if you're following along with the Hugo nominees or the Nebula nominees, I'm going to leave a link in the comments, and you can see those for yourself and choose some of those books and follow along with that as well. And I know the Hugos in particular have a lot of controversy, but it seems like this year's Hugo committee is going a very different route than last year's Hugo committee. So so check out the book, and and for any of the other books that I talked about, if you're interested in any of these, then go ahead and click on any of those links and buy the book. That'd be great. But please, I'd love to hear from you. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your feedback and kind of what did you enjoy about these books? What did you not enjoy? Do you have other suggestions and recommendations? Maybe you're doing the 52 book challenge too. What are you reading? I'd love to hear about that. And so, yeah, let's keep the conversation going, everybody. And hey, happy reading this month, and thank you for taking the time to watch my March recap.